the carnivore pizzas and the carnivore nachos.
We're going against the grain, literally and figuratively, you know?
Getting into carnivore, I always say, is a lot of mental. Letting go of those old habits, forming new ones is mentally really hard and taxing to let go.
Figure out what works for you. It's harder for people that have severe food addictions. I mean, that makes it harder. So you, in some ways, again, you kind of have to know yourself.
Hello, everybody. Here with Evan and me, Chad, and we're just going to kind of talk. I think a little bit. He's going to give off a little bit of where he came from, what he's doing, and where he wants to go, and then the rest of it's just going to be us talking life, faith, carnivore, everything else. So, hello,
Hey,
how are you? Good to meet you.
you too, Chad. I've been a big fan since, I got
Appreciate
into
it.
carnivore and found your channel, and to connect with you now is just it's a joy.
And you did with Dante too. He's somebody I got to hook up with because I watched him, and it took me so long to get into this. From doing this, like I said, for 5 years of my keto, I should have started, but I just figured, oh, there's enough people doing it.
Yeah, Dante's a great guy. He's so down to earth, easy to talk with. Just he's the real deal. Is what you see on his YouTube channel is how he is, when you talk to him one on one.
Yep. And I know he's also mentioned his faith quite a bit too,
Yeah.
which is cool. There's a lot of us in that community.
Oh yeah,
You know, doesn't have to be, but it's nice to have it
I agree.
because it's something solid to lean back on.
That's right. Well, I mean, it does connect with carnivore in a way because we're going against the grain, literally and figuratively, And and if you have to have some sense of strong convictions, and people of faith, there you have strong convictions, so you have to be able to, in some ways, exercise that muscle when it comes to carnivore too.
Now, how did you get into it? Did you get into it for what reasons?
It's interesting. It was more I'd always had a stomach ache, for some whatever reason, probably since middle school. I'd always have digestive gut problems. And after a while, I just kind of learned to live with it. And, sort of just a little bit of a chronic pain. And it wasn't horrible, it wasn't debilitating, but it was bad. And my daughter, who's now almost 17, was diagnosed with celiac several years ago. So we had to totally change up what we served in our home. And so we couldn't have gluten, couldn't have any. And I began to look, that kind of opened my eyes to alternative diets, in a sense, a way and the role nutrition plays in our life. I mean, when I learned about celiac, it can affect your mental health as well. And so that kind of opened the door I'd never thought differently. I'd always thought, oh, the Mediterranean diet must be the healthiest diet. I should try to, go towards that. But when I started researching celiac, things like keto came up. And this happened to be the time when keto was very popular. And then there was a guy named Michael Hyatt, who I love following. He's a sort of a productivity guru, and he was doing keto. So I said, okay, I'm going to try it. And it was fantastic. I lost 20, I had about 20, 25 pounds to lose, and I lost it in about a month. My stomach felt a little better, not a ton better, but a little better. And the more I did keto, the more actually I realized I had some issues. I was addicted to sweets. I went from, the regular sugar sweets to keto sweets, but I was still addicted to it. And my stomach still hurt. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to go, in a sense, extreme keto and try carnivore. This was 2.5 years ago, and it was spectacular overnight. I know this isn't true for everybody, but for me, it was transformative right away. I started lifting weights again. I hadn't lifted weights in about 10 years. I started listening to classical music again. I'd been a little, I played piano when I was younger, and I kind of turned that off, but somehow I think some brain fog cleared up, and I felt that desire again. Um, I started writing more. So I'm a writer, and I was writing about 500 words a day, and suddenly, without seemingly more effort, my productivity doubled to about 1,000 words a day. So it was just a tremendous clearing of the head, and it's just been wonderful ever since.
That's awesome. It's funny about the keto snacks
Yeah,
because I did keto wrong. I always say that to people. Clean keto is great. The keto that I learned was like fat bombs, chocolate
yep,
cookie bars,
yep,
all these alternatives.
Yeah.
And this is a good discussion that I have with people. I have this double edge. I always try to balance everything I think about. I'm kind of against the carnivore pizzas and the carnivore nachos and making all those things. If you have some eating problems from
Yes.
the past, to make that clear. I'm okay with it if you're at your prime weight, or you're truly like, I don't care about losing weight. I'm just doing this for all the metabolic reasons, again, the no joint pains, the feeling younger.
Yeah.
And I do okay with all this extra dairy, and I do okay with all these things,
I agree.
then go for it. But I do think some of that's creeped in from the keto world of like, you know, hey, here's all these recipes you can try that are alternatives.
Truffles and,
Yeah.
I agree. Simple. One of the beautiful parts of carnivore for me is the simplicity. It is pretty much I can have a steak or ground beef, and I do lion, so I'm pretty strict, and it's not. And
Mhm.
I also basically do OMAD now, which I don't need to. I mean, in terms of if you're thinking solely about weight loss, I'm pretty much at my ideal weight, I think. Um, but the simplicity of it, the way it makes me feel, the the clarity, and I know we're going to talk about this, but there is a spirituality about it. There is a sense that I'm grounded in how I what I eat, and that opens me up to experiencing more of what God intends for us in the world.
Yeah.
And so, I like the simplicity. To me, yeah, if people love food and they want to be really creative and do new interesting dishes, and they don't have food addictions, more power to them. And that's great. But that's not it's not my approach. Yeah.
Correct. And I think that gets back into that faith thing. When food becomes this driving force, oh, and again, I think people have to take the nuances of what I'm saying, where it becomes this thing where it's this huge prep, huge stuff, all these things, getting everything ready. And it starts to take up this time that you could be using for other
Right.
things, whether it's just sitting and enjoying family, reading a
Right.
book, listening to classical music,
Yeah.
doing other things. And again, if that's a hobby too, there's those fine nuances. But I do think it kind of overtakes. And I joke about veggie burgers and carnivore pizza. Both aren't what they are. So why call it that? Why not just call it a carnivore pie, or a carnivore, something? So the carnivore pizza thing, I guess, kind of works, but at the same time, it doesn't, because it's not pizza and you're putting that pizza word in there.
I agree with you.
And I do think there's something to that. And we were talking a little bit beforehand, and it's like, even, like in Christianity, and I don't, even the Jewish community I know has their divisions, of the different types. And one can look down on the other that you're not doing this, right. And the same thing with the Christians, where it shouldn't be that way, but it is. So we can't change that. That's just how it's been for the whole time. And I think that's going to continue with the carnivore. You're going to have those people that are like, no, the cheese is perfectly okay because it's animal. And I would still say, well, it's perfectly okay. But if you have a problem, pull back.
Right.
You know, if you're blaming your religion for you not succeeding,
Right.
pull back.
Right.
That's that same parallel, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And in some ways you have to know yourself and you have to experiment. Not everyone, you have to kind of figure out what works for you. It's harder for people that have severe food addictions. I mean, that makes it harder. So in some ways, again, you kind of have to know yourself and know, you know what? I mean, we talked a little bit about Dante, our friend, who knows lion is what lion diet, just eating beef and water is what's best for him. And for that is true for some people. So you really, it's a journey of self knowledge, and also being disciplined with yourself. So I think there's room, as we talked about, for carnivore pizza. That's going to bring some people into carnivore, which is great. It's healthy, but it can also distract from what the true benefits are. And we're always going to be growing. I know there's lots of debates on is it good? Is it healthy to just go right into carnivore from the standard American diet? Or should you have a period of transition? Again, I'm more of a just go for it kind of guy. But for some people, having a transition is healthy and good. So you kind of
Yeah.
have to know yourself and know what works.
I think too those like carnivore pizza treats and things can also help somebody if they jumped in with both feet. 2 months in, they're freaking out, going, "Oh, I've got shaky legs.
Yeah.
I've got to have something. I'm going to have a slice of pizza." They could go, "Wait a second. I'm going to make carnivore pizza."
Yeah. You're right.
And I think this is also where sometimes saving those things for when you truly need it
Totally.
can be really strong.
Totally.
That's when you go pull the pork rinds out, throw a bunch of cheese on them. Pork rinds and sour cream are amazing. I ate those in the beginning.
Yeah.
I don't eat them now, because I kind of joke I'm kind of like carnivore on a dairy farm, maybe because I do have some dairy because of my no gallbladder issue,
Hmm.
but it's just Parmesan cheese. Once in a while, that Gruyere, I think is how you pronounce it correctly, but it's a raw milk cheese. So actual Italian Parmesan is raw milk, has to be raw milk.
Hmm.
A domestic does not have to be. That's why you got to look when you buy Parmesan.
Very interesting.
It's got to be from Italy.
That's
And that way, and all the cows in that region that it has to come from are A2. So to me, it's just too little. It doesn't make or break it, but I do feel it helps.
oh for sure.
And if I have about 2 or 3 ounces with my meal, it slows me up enough that the no gallbladder isn't an issue.
It's good.
Otherwise, I don't even do seasonings. I'll have some seasonings like taco meat once in a while when my boy makes it, and I'll have like a little bowl that's like, the size of my hand.
Mm.
I won't make it the whole meal though.
Yeah. That's good. I mean, yes. So you got to know yourself. Got to know yourself and and be realistic. Some people are going to need to have pork rinds sometimes, and that's okay. I think there are phases of carnivore that I think we all. I've been thinking about this a lot. There are certain phases in the beginning. I think all of us. Um, Maybe not certain people maybe can do it 100% to lion, but all of us had pork rinds and cheese and things like that. And then you learn, you evaluate. This is one of the things about faith is so important is patience. We have to have a certain amount of patience in life. And some people get into carnivore and want that instant results. And I was lucky, I had certain instant results, but that isn't true for everybody. And I evolved and grew a lot on the journey, and the results just keep getting better over time. It's sort of like it multiplies. So to be patient for that and not expect everything to happen instantly, it's a good exercise.
So how long have you been doing it now?
About 2.5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it's a pretty good time. And that's the other interesting thing, you and I kind of have, I think, some parallels of things. But it's like that first year, for me, losing a lot of weight, getting that first year, I was kind of done. I got to the weight that I never thought I would. And then that next year, so my 2 year mark, I was still having changes and things were still changing. But that time you kind of start living that new life,
Yes.
I think is what starts getting you into that thing. And for me, I still like have a couple bites of my kid's birthday cake and I don't care. I don't ever desire a whole slice.
That's good.
So it's just that celebration of them having that cake. During the holidays, I might have a couple bites of something. Oh, I remember I used to like these things, and I usually try it, and it's usually always disgusting. Sometimes it fools me, and it's actually okay, but I have no desire. Like I don't even care for the taste of chocolate anymore. It's
Mm.
just weird to me.
Yeah.
And I think too that for people might be watching this, that you at 2.5 years, me, at the 4 years, Dante's about the same as me, I think, around that 4 year mark. And some of these other people that do these things, to whoever it might be, Chafee, Baker, obviously like Laura Spath, has been doing a long time, and she'll still eat cheese and have, like she'll be okay with the bratwurst that might have a few carbs, and she's got a family and she doesn't care, and that works for her, and she's been doing it. And this also shows that long term, this is just your life.
Yeah.
This is what it becomes. you don't really have to do it. I think some people start getting away from the cravings. Some people still have the cravings, unfortunately. Like I have no cravings. What about you?
It's I really don't much anymore. I If I feel like I have a craving, I know that I'm really hungry. Like that's sort of a cue for me. Like the other night, I was at a meeting at my synagogue, and somebody brought around this beautiful toffee made with matzah, unleavened bread, and everyone was so excited, and people were eating it. And they know I'm carnivore. It's it's fun. They're
Yeah.
like, "You're not even tempted?" I'm like, "No, I mean, I'm happy you guys are enjoying it. I don't want to process say, I know it's not healthy, but I'm happy you guys are enjoying it. There's really no desire, no
Yeah.
craving.
And even if it's there, you probably know enough just to say no,
That's right.
if you don't give in to that first bit. And that gets back to like what you say, I say, everybody learns, know yourself,
Yeah,
be honest with yourself
that's right.
of doing that. And one thing I've talked about quite a bit, and I always think it's worth repeating, is this messing up. Like if you do have a treat, as I call them, because I hate the word cheating, and you mess up, you have something like a cupcake. As long as you learn from it,
Yeah.
it's okay. I sometimes think that learning process makes carnivore people stronger because you're going to come out with two things. You're either going to come out with, I still crave them,
Hmm.
or I don't like it at all.
Right.
If you come out with the I don't like it at all, it's like there's almost this burden of like every time you see your friends having a cupcake, you're like, I miss those. Oh, I used to love those things. Oh, I miss them. You almost now have this new viewpoint of like, those things are nasty. I don't even want that synthetic garbage. And that is, and all my testing that I do, because if you've seen some of my videos, I test everything to the nth degree. And that testing the chocolate, testing the things, I know I don't like those things, but I'll still have a couple bites just to see where I'm at. And that is so strong to really know. You can say, oh, I don't crave those things. But deep down, I think some people do. At least I did. You could still go, oh, those are pretty good. And if you eat this and then say, "Oh, that is so good,"
Hmm.
have the power to stop and step away and say, "I've still got an eating problem. I can't touch these, and I know I can't." And then that way it's even easier to kind of avoid, and you won't say, "Well, I'll test this." Now, I will say come around like in a year and maybe test it again because you might find that
Agreed.
point where you truly don't
Agreed.
want it.
Hmm.
Because if I go to like that end of that 2-year mark to now where I'm at in that 4-year mark, I think I've gotten even stronger at just truly like, you know, like I literally only eat a few cuts of meat. Like I don't even care for meat variety anymore,
Yes.
which is strange.
Variety is
I used to
overrated.
buy tri-tip. I used to buy, different cuts just to have a little breakup of texture and flavor. And nowadays, I'm down to like lamb and chuck, and I can't afford ribeye every day, so I don't eat ribeye every day.
I,
But
I agree with
I just I don't care, and I don't really. We were talking about, I know in the email you mentioned about the minimalist name, because I'm definitely have that minimalist, like my little wardrobe. I should take a picture. It's like my drawer for my summer. My drawers are fairly small. It's like this weird thin dresser. So it's like maybe a little over a foot wide
you. Hmm.
by like a foot and a half deep. I have a drawer for my summer, a drawer for my winter, a drawer for my like thermal overtops, like fleece and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And like all my socks are the same. My hiking socks are the
Nice.
same. I
Simplicity.
tend to have the same. I buy two of the same pair of shorts when I buy them. I buy like two or four of the same shirts. Like these are just cheap shirts from Costco, but I buy four and they come in 2 packs. So like my shirts tend to always be,
This is an Amazon sweater. I'm not in Phoenix like you. I got to
yeah.
Chicago, so I got to buy sweaters. But
What is it today?
yeah.
63 though. It's cold here.
So yeah, I agree that I'm pretty much the same way. Like I occasionally like will try different cuts of meat. Like this is going to sound weird, but I love beef brain, which is hard to get. But there's
Hmm.
an Amish store near me, and so where I get beef brain, and sometimes they have like the other day they had like gizzards. They had like a tongue and what did they have? Tongue and heart. And I usually don't eat, but I'm like, you know what? this is from an Amish farm. It's fresh. I'm gonna, I'm not gonna pass this up. So I will still do that, but basically, it's chuck eyes. I don't like to spend all the money on ribeyes either. I mean, I love them, but uh, chuck eyes, chuck roast, ribeyes, and ground beef makes life
Yeah.
so much easier.
And again, it's that I don't need seasonings, I don't need to shop, I don't need to get all these ingredients together. I don't go, "Oh, I can't make this because I need, like, a half teaspoon of oregano or
Right,
something." You know what I mean? There's never that like, "Oh, bummer, I'll have to leave that
right.
out." And it's just simple. And I tend to cook outside. I set up an outdoor kitchen,
Nice.
and 99% of my cooking's outdoor
That's great.
because it is kind of greasy and splattery cooking meat every day.
Yeah,
So there's zero cleanup on the grill or outside. I use these carbon steel debouillé pans, like French chef steel pans that I love.
nice.
It's like cast iron, but it reacts quicker and it's easier cleanup than cast iron.
Yeah, cast iron can make a mess.
Yeah, and so like I use those and I basically am set,
That's great.
and I come in, cut it on the cutting board. I use chopsticks to eat because I use them so much in the islands and I just like them because 'cause they're simple, and you don't poke the food and mash it because sometimes even when you poke food like chuck roast with a fork, I know this is so weird, it still kinda squishes in a little bit in the tines and you squish a little bit of the juice out.
Yeah, yeah, no,
Just a tiny bit and you're poking holes, and if you pick it up with chopsticks, you're not doing that. Now granted, I'm cutting it all up beforehand, but again, it's kind of like this weird I'm this dude, like, my medicine cabinet and my shaving stuff is all labels are all exactly forward. I'm one of those people that everything is very precise.
it's good.
So when I cut it up, I put, like, my favorite bites in one little pile, the things I think are gonna be a little tougher in another pile,
Well, you're a
and then the
photographer, so
medium
you're
pieces.
a photographer and editor, so you're used to
Mhm.
being very precise. You have to be for that, and that
Everything has to be in its place.
yes, and that probably helps a lot with carnivore.
Yeah.
Um, there's
So I eat off the cutting board, just with the thing. So I literally all I end up doing is rinsing. Sometimes I eat out of a bowl. If I'm making a chuck roast, I'll tend to eat out of these bowls
mhm,
because I can cut it all up, throw it in the bowl, and I just eat out of the bowl until I'm satiated.
mhm,
Put the lid on the bowl, put it back in the fridge, pull it out tomorrow and continue.
nice. No,
Because I'll tend to make like 2 to 3 chuck roast at the same time, and I sous vide 'em. My favorite way by a mile.
that's great. It's
Oh.
fantastic.
Sous vide, like the other day, I had some, even though I'm eating more lamb these days, I pulled out 2 sous vide for 30 hours, but I dry brine them first for 2 days. So are you familiar with dry brining?
A little
Putting
bit.
salt on it
I
and you wrap.
I don't do it, but I've heard of it.
Gotta try it, gotta try it.
Yeah,
I would urge you to try it. It
okay.
puts a whole new flavor and texture on the meat.
Yeah, that's great.
So, like, if I do chuck roast, they're literally in the fridge for 2 days, drying, and then I'll put them in the sous vide for, like, a day to day and a half,
Mm, mm,
and I find if I put them on in the morning when I get up, say like I get up about 5:30 and by the time I kind of, do a few things, it's like 6:37 is when I'm say prepping. I can put it on and I know that tomorrow any time during that day I can eat it.
nice.
So sometimes it is 24 to 30 hours depending when I get hungry
Mm,
and it works. And then if I do a bunch of them, and if you take it out and then finish it like on a grill or in a carbon steel pan, if I do say like even 3 or 4 chucks and I do each one in its own bag, I can just take that bag out, put it on the counter, and it gets to room temperature because I know I'm going to eat it at some point that day. And I'm not one of those people that think meat's going to go bad in a vacuum packed bag on my counter
mm,
for 6 hours. It won't.
mm,
And by the time you just sear it really good and put a beautiful sear on there, it heats it up enough inside that it's done, and it's easy because you literally prep and you just put it away and you pull it out and it's just so easy.
nice.
That is the other stuff I love about this,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, it's so simple. I use the Dreo, and I do
Yeah.
sous vide in there, which makes it even simpler. It's just it makes life so much easier to have that. Um, it is the simplicity. And if we want to talk a little bit about faith, the simplicity of this way of eating is a big part of, I think, the connection with faith and how it's grounding. Just like what we believe grounds us, gives us a sense of purpose and meaning.
Mhm.
you know, carnivore gives us a certain kind of grounding in nutrition that we know what God intended for our bodies. Now, okay, I don't want to come off like carnivore is not my religion. Judaism is my religion. I'm
Correct.
not trying to tell everyone you have to live this way and it's the only way. No, but for me, it has provided a certain kind of grounding and a certain way of looking at the world and in a bigger picture of understanding kind of how to best how God intends for me to live. And that's a very
Yeah.
powerful feeling that I've gotten from this. And I don't think everybody, it's not all carnivores feel this way, although a lot of them do, as we talked about.
This would be interesting too if people leave comments. What's your base? I'm going to call that your base. Our religion is our base. We know this is our ground level. We'll never go, if you want to say above it or below it. This is our ground. You know what I mean? We have this viewpoint that we'll never let it take over. And we also know enough that our health and our temples, our bodies, I kind of let mine go, but I'm here now.
Mm,
I, I always view religion as that it's a solid base to do on. And I know people always need that base because a lot of this too is mental. And I think people that are facing big health issues or really being severely obese, what is your base? What do you fall back on? When carnivores say you do have these pauses where you're not losing weight, or what does that make sense? What I'm trying to say is that grounding, like you were saying, kind of that grounding of what we're at, I think is so I think people need it, whether that's a really good friend for you or, if it's another religion or if it's I don't know what. You know what I mean? That's I guess I just don't know what other people lean on to have that. And I don't know if that's maybe why some people too have a hard time, you know, and kind of get depressed and fall down.
100%. It's almost like if you're a parent, if you're a parent and every parent knows there are going to be tough times with kids. That's just part of it. If you don't have anything to lean on, and that doesn't have to be religion. It can just be a set of values. This is what's important to us. This is our family's mission. This is our family's purpose. If you don't have a certain set of grounding, then you are going to fall off the wagon and it's going to be miserable. And you're not going to be able to restore, you're not going to be able to return to a sense of harmony and purpose. You have to have something to fall back on. And I think it's true with carnivore. If you don't have something to fall back on, you're going to fall off the wagon and not be able to get back on. But if you fall off
Yeah.
the wagon and you have a safety net, a sense of purpose to lift you up, then you can get back on the wagon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's always something there. Like I said, when I was really overweight, I was horribly depressed.
Yeah.
It's important to say I would have never committed suicide. No way. It's not even a thought. For one, against the religion.
Right.
Two, it would leave my family
Right.
without a father. And I already failed my weight. The last thing I was gonna do is fail my
Mm,
family. At least that's how I viewed it. And
mm.
that basis belief. If you truly again, what you lean on. So I think even those kind of faith things are huge,
Yes.
where there's just, you're never gonna go lower than a point, I guess.
Right.
So even when I was extremely obese and I tried, as I call it, going green, I tried, juice and I tried veggie junk. I tried the no small plate diet. I tried kind of paleo. I tried a little bit of the blood type, but not really. And I thought it kind of worked, but you know, so I tried all these things, but I knew at least it's almost like I slid down a hill and hit the bottom, and that bottom was just a long, flat path
Yeah.
for me. And that religion was that flat path base. I knew I was never going to fall any lower because I couldn't fall any lower because that religion held me up,
Mm-hmm.
spiritually, physically, mentally with my kids. I was still a good father. I still had a wife that loved me, kids that loved me, friends that, didn't care that I was fat.
Right.
And that's huge
You had a foundation.
because I was the only one hating it, but I knew it was wrong
Right.
kind of thing. And I just, those are those things I'm curious what other people use as that
I don't
solid
think everyone
base.
has that. I mean, I hope people can find that, but it is some people don't, and that makes change even harder. You know, it's like you're starting from way behind the starting line. You know, if you have a strong foundation, even when you fall, you can get back up. But if you're starting way behind and you fall, it's very hard to catch up. You know, I wish
Yeah.
more people had that. It's a blessing. I mean, that's faith is so core to who I am, and I know to who you are. And again, it doesn't have to be a religion, uh,
No,
but we need something to that.
you need
Yeah,
something. That's what I'm saying, like, if it's might be like reading good books.
yeah,
It might be like, your classical music or music. It might be something that you go to do, or watching a good movie, or a show that you like,
yeah,
that kind of gives you that grounding point of like, okay, I know I'm here. Like I watch Band of Brothers a lot because I have a lot of respect for that generation.
yes,
And it always grounds me going, yeah, times are weird right now politically, but they're not putting, you guys in ovens, you know,
yeah.
and that's the reality.
It's a good.
Are they going to put us guys, Christians, in ovens next? I don't know. But, it's like the persecution of things. So I know that while we're might be, people get bummed about the political state of it is today, whatever side you're on, it's not that bad. We've got stores, we've got iPhones, we've got, this great YouTube sharing things, and we all share this in common. And even like, here's a question. When you started your journey in this and eating, I had this question the other day a couple times. Hey, did you ever cheat when you first started carnivore? And I said, no, I didn't need to because I had keto for a year before that. Keto allowed me, like we were talking, on all these treats. We were talking about that a little bit, the packaged treats, the fat bombs, the junk. So I didn't need to cheat. And keto taught me this is wrong. You can't be doing this.
Hmm.
But the first few months of carnivore, I never cheated, but I was eating a lot of pork rinds and sour
Yep,
cream.
yep, yep.
But then I asked myself, if I only ate pork rinds and sour cream, could I survive? And of course, it's no.
Yep.
So it was kind of like, okay, so maybe I should just put that aside and do that. And I think this is too where, temptation and faith are always a huge thing. It's all through, the whole Bible and temptation. So at least for me, when I started the carnivore, besides having carnivore treats, I never fell off the wagon, and I never feel a need to because I already deal with temptation every day with my religion. So temptation has never been a problem for me.
It's good. Yeah, I distinctly remember a couple time. Like, I love these carnivore bars. They're expensive. They're
Hmm.
great, and I had a couple of them with honey. And to me, that was cheating. And I
Hmm.
remember I was like, "Oh, I want that sweet taste." And I guess I'm going to cheat. I'll cheat with a carnivore bar. So that was true. And I used to drink a lot of Zevia. But I
Mm.
noticed with Zevia, first of all, I was still craving the sweet taste, and it was addicting. It was I'd have like 3 or 4 a day, and so I there was a certain point, and I was succeeding on carnivore. I was feeling great, but the Zevia would it still had that addiction to it, and so I said, "I'm just gonna cut it out," and I stopped. And I threw out they're expensive, so I was a little upset that I had to throw out all these Zevias, but I'm like, "You know what? It's worth it. I'm gonna throw it out." And then it became, kind of over time I found those last little sticking points, and it gets better from there. Now, I do drink coffee, and I know some people would say that that's, "Oh, you can't do it," and, but, to me, I've tried no coffee, and it doesn't make a difference. Like, I didn't
Yeah.
notice anything better, and you know what? We're human beings. There is some it's okay to get simple pleasures sometimes, so I don't even see it as a treat. It's just a joyful part of my day, and
Yeah.
there will be people maybe in the comments who say, "Oh, you still have an addiction." Okay, call us.
Yeah, I'm not perfect. I never will be
None
perfect.
of us.
That's I think that's another good thing about the religion. We know we're not perfect. We can pretend, but we will never be perfect. So we're also okay with that.
That's
Like I'm one of those ones that gave up coffee at 2 years in.
mm,
So I still say try to give up coffee in another 6 months or a year. Find like your year anniversary marks and just try to quit and stay off it for a month and then introduce it and just see what happens.
yeah,
And if not, enjoy it. maybe I'm just jealous
Yeah,
that you can drink it and I can't.
yeah,
But I noticed a huge gain.
that's good.
But I also quit for the first 2 years and I never noticed anything. So I'm like, well, I love my espresso. So I'm going to keep drinking my espresso. And it wasn't until I noticed that change
Right.
that I said, okay, now that's, another mark off the thing.
Gotta know yourself. Got to know
Yeah.
yourself, you know, and
And you said it and I say it, test. Test yourself. That's why I challenge people, maybe test quitting the coffee every year and see if you don't. The worst case scenario is every year you also, if you quit it or stop it, I should say, because you're not quitting, but you're stopping for a month, it also kind of puts you back in this power position of like, okay, I don't think I have as an addiction that's as strong as it is, because if I can stop it for a month, while I might crave it, even over like a week, you'll kind of relax, and then it's like, good, I'm not craving it, but I do enjoy it. There's that fine line of difference. And I'm huge on this whole mental thing, like those kind of little things that I feel are really
I think of
good for people
OMAD.
to do.
I think of 1 meal a day OMAD in the same way. Like, I don't feel like I have to stick to it, but I like that I
Yeah.
can control it. You know, I was talking to somebody who didn't know I was carnivore just recently, and I was wonderful conversation. And I was telling her, and she's like, "What? You don't eat breakfast? You don't eat dinner? Like, and no." It's like I'm not bound by that stricture, by that way of being in the world. It's kind of a certain kind of freedom. And even though there are many days I'll have 2 meals, but knowing that I can just have one, or even fast. Obviously, fasting is another one of those things. It is a kind of it lets you feel a little bit more in control, because there's so much in life that we're not in control of. We all know there's
Yeah.
so and so actually having a certain kind of locus of control is psychologically very healthy.
I'm picturing her asking you about the thing is probably right after, "You don't have some vegetables? What about this?
I know.
Well, what about oatmeal? You don't have oatmeal? You don't have what about fruit?" It's so funny how people like, "Oh, well, what vegetables?" It's like, "No, just meat."
That's it.
And it really, you can just see this little something in there going, "Snap,"
What?
something broke, and they're like, "No,
Yeah.
it can't be."
I kind of enjoy it now.
Oh,
I
I
love
do
seeing the
too.
reaction, like, "What?" It's like you just told them, something so outrageous, like, "Oh, I just saw a UFO." "What?" Like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I don't eat any vegetables." "What?" It really it's kind of amusing now. Um,
Yeah.
uh, but I hope, we talked about this a little bit earlier. I do hope carnivore catches on more. I am noticing it, especially younger people.
It's really grown.
Yeah. I mean, I was talking with my daughter the other day, and she was telling me, "Oh, dad, someone in my, physics class is carnivore," and so it is
Oh, that's cool.
yeah. And so when people I do think younger people at least have some are conversant with it. I mean, Joe Rogan obviously had a huge impact on that. Sean Baker being on Joe. I mean, because that's appeals to such a young demographic, and such popular
Yeah.
cultural appeal. So at least it's in the conversation. It will never become mainstream because it's too hard. Well, people think it's too hard. I don't think it's too hard, but for some people, just for cultural reasons, because the culture is so powerful, it's too hard. But it will become more popular for sure. More people will take it up, and I think that's good. I hope so.
Well, it's the, "Oh, come on, have a pizza, enjoy life. Oh, have a donut, enjoy life." It's like, I enjoy life when my knees aren't cracking and popping, and I can go hiking at 60 years old, and I can put in 3 to 5 miles a day every day and have no issue. It's like I didn't even hike. It's just like I come back and I feel good.
It's awesome.
I would have never been able to do that,
No,
you know? It's like I'm 20 again.
no,
So to me, that it's a common term. I did not coin it, but, oh, restrictive to me is having diabetes, whatever. I didn't have diabetes, but you know what I mean? It's those people that all say the same thing.
absolutely. It makes sense. I mean, I hope, that the aging. I mean, we think of aging as bringing so many problems, and
Yeah.
and it's true. Obviously, our body does decline over time. That's how we're created, but it doesn't have to be nearly as bad as it is for some people today. It can be we're meant to have certain skills even into our 80s. And I didn't even look. Moses lived to 120. So, there is something in our bodies that we have been hurting with the standard American diet. And if we can restore some of that vitality, now some people have it naturally, our bodies are different, but more of us can have stronger bodies later in life with the proper human diet. There's no question.
I think too, if you look at it on a curve, I think what processed food has done is that curve is, one of those kind of curves. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like if you took the thing and bent it, with a slow curve. I really think our life curve, when you look at other tribes and other people that do live to say even 80 years old, and these people that barely get touched, the
Yeah.
Papua New Guinea or
Yeah.
places,
Yes.
and these leaders are at 80 years old and they're still contributing. Granted, they're slower, they do different things, but they're not out of shape.
Right.
They're still hunting, they're still providing, they're still doing things. I think the curve should be more this, you know, really steep line of decay, like, or non-decay, you know what I mean?
Right.
And then there's like a quicker top to it. So it's kind of like
Right.
you go through life just, perfectly fine. And then it just kind of, so when you go, it's a fairly quick,
That's such
there,
a good
you can live
observation.
to that breakdown point.
That's such a good observation, Chad, because I've conducted hundreds and hundreds of funerals in my in my role as a rabbi, and I've seen people who suffer for years, you know,
Yeah.
and and that is a much worse way to go than people who you know are gone in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
They live, and obviously, we don't have. I mean, at the end of life, we don't have much control of it. We have some control as we build up towards it, but it is generally better for families when somebody doesn't have to suffer for so long. And I do think that seems to be the more natural way. Our modern medical system can keep people alive for so long,
Yeah.
and it can, you know, for some people who have a hard time letting go, it can be very powerful, but it also can be destructive and hurtful and reduces quality of life.
Yeah. And I mentioned on the live there that my dad's was in the hospital, unfortunately, 92 and a half, and they were going to do a biopsy and they put him on this liquid thing for 2 days, which, they shouldn't have done. I think at that point, the biopsy thing, something could have been different.
Hmm.
And then they messed up. And because as blood thinners, they didn't want to do the biopsy. The one doctor was too afraid that if he nipped something with the blood thinner, so they postponed it. Then they put him on the liquid diet again for 2 days. And at 92 and a half, being on a liquid diet for 4 days with no proper, we know, you know,
Yeah.
the sugar in a bag isn't proper nutrients kind of thing. And it was just this huge mess.
Ugh.
So unfortunately, like he wasn't walking and now he's went from, being able to do things to not walking and now he's in a rehab. And my other view on this is it really hit me way harder than I thought. I'm doing a video on it basically too, that it's like, the stress level. But, when he passes, and everybody faces this, every single parent eventually goes away, and then their children don't have that parent. And then we will have that with our children. You know what I mean? So this is part of life. So I know I'm not alone. And also he's going home to Jesus, to God, so that calming ability that I know this isn't the end,
That's right.
I think has also helped me kind of, deal with that. But it is interesting how hard it hit me,
Of course it does.
and the stress.
Of
And my sleep is all whacked and everything else.
It's very pain no matter how optimized we are, no matter how one of the things I love about carnivore is the feeling. That's why I called my channel Zen Carnivore, is that you do get a feeling of calm and peace in this way of eating. But life is life. There are going to be difficult circumstances. There are going to be losses, and we're
Mhm.
human. Of course, it's gonna. If we were robots, that would be a little weird. We're going to get
Yeah.
hit hard by things. We losing a parent. If our kids are having a tough time, that's that's part of it. What carnivore does, though, is it helps us manage that. I think much better. If we're on a diet that is just constantly sugar highs and sugar lows, and you got to eat every 3 hours and this and that, that makes everything harder.
Yeah.
with when we're fueling our body properly, we can deal with it and we can be present. Like you can be present with your dad in those difficult circumstances, and you're not thinking about when your next meal is going to come and all this. It allows you to be fully engaged in life, in the ups and downs of life, of which there are many. That's
Mhm.
you know, we're doing our
And
bodies right.
besides the massive physical healing, I think there's a massive mental side to it. Getting into carnivore, I always say, is a lot of mental. Letting go of those old habits, forming new ones is mentally really hard and taxing to let go of everything that you've been, you know, programmed
Right.
to believe and isn't true.
Right.
That's hard to let go of everything, you know. It's like in a movie where you find out your parents are spies,
Yeah.
or something silly.
Yeah.
Those kids are like, "What?" Kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's almost like that, where then now that we understand this whole thing, and then it brings us to that point of the mental side that you and I are in, living this long term. It's just this whole other, besides just the mental clarity you hear and everything else. I'm not sure how to say what it is, but this mental ability to not even be worried about those things, or things don't get to you. There's, so I don't have dandruff. Some hair colors come back. My eyesight's got, I've gone those videos, and other people have made those videos. All these things that you feel heal, no more joint pains. On top of it, like, I hate the idiot in the left lane on the road who's, zigzagging because they're on their phone.
Yeah.
I don't like the old people in Costco who pull their cart up, put it sideways in the aisle, then walk back to get the samples, and they have nothing in their cart. They're just grazing.
Yeah.
Oh, there's the dumb pop up again. See, they turn it back on. That's so funny. They must be turning it. We were talking about those things, and I turned it off in the thing, but it's back on. That is funny. But anyway, those things still bug me, but they don't bug me to the point that it matters.
100.
You know,
So
it,
true. I applied for a fellowship at Harvard, a really wonderful thing, and I put in a lot of work in my application. I really worked hard. I got incredible recommendations, and just yesterday, we're recording this. I think it's what is Thursday. Yesterday, I got an email after months and months of waiting, saying sorry. It was like a 3-line email saying sorry, you didn't get it. And
mhm,
the old me, like 5 years ago, would have been so upset. I would have probably, you know, wrote them back saying why it is, I really believe I'm the most qualified, da da da. And I'm like, you know what? Okay, wasn't meant to be, wasn't meant to be. I'm a little upset, but there's a certain calmness. There is. My
yeah,
wife even noticed it. She's like, I would have thought you'd be more upset about this. I joke, I'm like, the Zen carnivore does not get upset with reality. I sort of,
that's good though. That's true.
yeah,
But it's like the old people in Costco. I just kind of,
yeah,
excuse me, can I get by you?
that's right.
Or something.
That's right.
But it's one of those things. It is interesting how all those little things, and it leads me to that point I was thinking in Costco. Now, here's something that I think is funny that I've started to notice I do. I want to go tell these people who I can see can barely get down the aisles, you know, hey, look at the stuff in your cart. Put all that back, head over to the meat section.
That's right.
I want to say that and I don't. Do you ever find yourself thinking that now? Like, I
Oh,
think more, and I have this love and this want to help these people, but I know I can't.
all the time.
And if the window opens, I will. I do it quite a bit. Again, I think that's maybe the religious, being able to evangelize is part of the Christian perspective, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Kind of thing. Like when I was at the meat thing and I'm buying all this meat, and there's this one guy that walked by like the other day who was, pretty big gut, and he's like, "Man, you're buying a lot." And I go, "Well, this is all I eat, man." I go, "I used to be close to 300 pounds, and look at me." He's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, I want to lose weight, but I'm trying this." And, I'm like, "Well, dude, here's the thing. Just look into carnivore,
Good.
just try to remember Chafee and Baker,
Yep.
just the big two, or Dr. Ken Berry.
Good.
Think Berry's a joke because he's a fruit eating the thing. Think Baker, bread,
That's good.
try to remember that in your head, bread and fruit, if you
Good.
have these things." And me saying this to you, and this is exactly how I told him, I said, me saying this to you a few times might help you remember. So Dr. Baker,
Beautiful.
Chafee, Berry, remember those and just look it up
Beautiful.
and try it because it'll change. And usually they want to talk more and kind of, well, what about this? And it's like, the typical, no, don't eat that.
Right.
No, don't eat that. Just, you know, you're seeing what I'm eating. Why do you think I have, I literally grab every single lamb chop because Costco only puts out like 8. When I go there, I take every single
Good
one
job.
and
Good job.
like, some chucks or something like that. And I go, that's it.
Yeah.
And
That's
he's like, well, I love meat. And I'm like, well, that's why you and I are in the meat department, buddy.
right.
So
That's great. And the truth is, Chad, like I do sometimes feel like sort of preach. I mean, look, I'm a rabbi, so I preach, I sermonize, I want people to live in a certain way. But politically, I tend to be more of a libertarian and I value
mhm,
people's freedom. I value,
me
you
too.
know, and
Yeah.
everyone has the ability. Now, we are being, the culture in a way brainwashes us and tells us to live in a certain way. So we are fighting an uphill battle. So we're not totally free in that way because we're marketed to so much. But I do value people's ability to make their own choices, and I want to honor that, and I do believe people, as a parent, again, you kind of know when your children do something for themselves because they came to that conclusion, they're
Yeah.
much more committed to it. So I am kind of like you. If the door is open, I will enter and I will help. But I'm not going to go around, telling people,
It's exactly how I do it.
yeah,
I feel like I'm lagging out. Do I look like I'm lagging in your end?
for a minute you did.
I Yeah, I think I'm kind of lagging. It could be my internet. Oh well, if it is, it is.
Okay,
I think people accept that. It's part of life.
that's right.
It's when I just talk like I'm a Japanese dubbed, you know,
Totally. I remember.
dubbed movie or any language dubbed movie.
That's like movies from the 80s when they were what? Yeah, you could definitely tell.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, I think that's the interesting thing because I do kind of have this love and pity and just thinking, man, if you had only known. And I mentioned this story one time, like this thing called Trail Life, which is like a Christian scouting group that my boy goes to. And this was probably about a year and a half after I started carnivore and I was already to my weight. And a couple of guys were talking. This was a newer dad I didn't know. And he was like about the size that I used to be, like in that,
mhm,
275 to 300-pound thing.
mhm.
And we were talking about riding bikes, motorcycles. And I said something like, oh, yeah, because I used to race, motocross and stuff like that. And he's like, oh, well, you don't know what it's like, having this weight on now and being older. And I'm like, well, actually,
I do.
I do.
Yeah.
Because I go, what do you weigh? And I think he was actually lighter than I was. And I go, well, I actually used to weigh more than you. And I go, and at this point, I'm older than, because most people don't think I'm
Right.
even 60 now. So like I was 57 then or something. And I go, dude, I'm 57.
Nice.
And he was just like, what? And then I got to tell him about it. And, I still see him and I still know him. And he hasn't, they're not going to necessarily do anything, but it's, that's fine. At least the little nuggets in the back of the brain.
Yeah. That's good.
And that gets back to like, we were talking about the carnivore. It'll never be mainstream. But I hope that little nuggets in the brain thinking they see all these stories. And there's a point when you hear so many stories, it's not just an internet fad, but it's there. And like I talked about beforehand, my hopeful goal is if they pick up anything, avoid the seed oils, avoid the grains.
Yes. Yep.
Just do those two things. And I tell people that a lot. Just anything that has seed oils, anything that has grains, and you might love your bread and stuff, but just have your veggies, have your fruit, have your whole things. Pick up your salad dressing bottle if it says like, any kind of weird, industrialized oils, don't have it.
Agreed.
And just do that
Agreed.
and then see what happens.
And I think, we people pick up on behavior. So if you're looking good and you're sounding good. I mean, my wife, she's not a carnivore, but she definitely eats more meat and eats less sugar and fewer seed oils since I took on this way. It
Yeah.
rubs off because you see how it helps me. Now, she has different dietary profile than I do. She's, I naturally, like Ken Berry talks about this, he said, I easily get obese. And the same is true with me. Like if I didn't stick to this, she's not like that. She, so, but the fact that the other benefits from it have rubbed off on her. And I think that's the way to go. Again, it's respecting people's freedom. Nobody likes a negative, Nelly who's always, criticizing everything you eat.
Yeah.
No, that's not a good way to be in the universe. I mean, one of the beautiful things about this is why I love Dr. Kiltz. He's such a spiritual guy. It's like this is about living a good life. We
Hmm.
want to enjoy life. You want to experience joy, and carnivore opens that up. But you can't force people through it, or else it's not joyful. And so,
Yeah.
the culture is trying to force us into a certain way of being. You should be eating this, you should be seeing a doctor for this, and you should be taking this medicine for this. That's not the way to live. That's
I think too, when I grew up, and the 15 years you grew up a little bit differently than I would have because the technology would have been there a little bit younger for
mhm,
you. We didn't really care about politics, and things in school. Now kids kind of do. And I think also there's so many people that want to jump on the cool bandwagon with whatever's happening on TikTok, or certain trends, that they're willing to jump on a trend which isn't going to be necessarily the carnivore, but it might be carnivore, which is fine. But at the same time, it's this polarization of views, maybe, is what I'm trying to get at. People now are so divided on their views. It's like all in or all out. They can't kind of reason to be like, oh, okay, you know, I think you know what I'm trying to say.
100%. It's polarizing. We live in
Yeah,
such a more divided world. I think the last sort of time before this, the late 1990s was, the 1990s when I was in high school and college, and politics was not that important. I mean, it was there, and it was becoming more important. But I think since the 2000s, and then it's just, yeah, I mean, in the last 10 years, it's gotten to new heights where everything is political. I mean, again, I do a lot
yeah,
of weddings. See, so it's very hard for people of different political backgrounds to get married and for families to get along. That's so
that's
sad.
just sad.
It's
I know.
incredibly sad. Is this why we want our country to be so divided? And so it's a big problem. And then that same type of partisanship and division that we see politically will spill over into other parts of life, like diet, like
I
sports.
think it's the attack on carnivore
Mm,
that is so odd, because like all these dietitians want to attack carnivore as a bad thing and don't, rather than saying, you know, okay, whatever. Like when I lost my gallbladder, it was a few months into the carnivore diet. I went
mhm.
to the Mayo Clinic. Mayo Clinic's pretty much known for the whole vegan ideology and stuff like that, but they're also good. The Mayo Clinic has
Of
some of the
course.
best people in the world.
Yeah.
My surgeon was this lady, and I'll just leave it at that, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
To not ever kind of say what, so somebody could go, "Oh, okay, I think I know," But at the same point, she was like, "Good, you found something that works, keep doing
That's a
it."
good
And I
doctor.
was shocked that she said that.
It's a good.
I wish I'd known more about my gallbladder, maybe trying to save it, but she said there was no way to save it. She also said there's no way that carnivore did this to you. It's the fact that it's working, and she goes, it's so full of sludge and so full of stuff. And when they showed the MRI and the other stuff on it, it was like this solid. It was almost like this weird solid thing inside, like a skin. Like, what I mean? There was almost no working to it.
Yeah.
That.
I knew I had a good doctor when, after I first, this was keto. This was, hopefully he doesn't respond differently with carnivore. He knows I'm carnivore, but initially was whatever you're doing, keep doing it. I said, I like this guy and I appreciate him.
Yeah.
And, my dad's a doctor, retired. My grandfather was a doctor. So I come from families of doctors. So I have utmost respect. But a lot of them today they're bound by a system, that the system is corrupt and the system
Yeah.
encourages a certain way of being. And there are some really good doctors, but they're few and far between. You have to find them. And
Hmm.
if you find one, stick with it. But you also have to have you also I mean, even this has nothing to do with carnivore, but you have to have an advocate when people are in the hospital. You have to have an advocate, someone to fight for you, or else they're gonna. I remember when I injured, I was a running injury, injured my pelvis, and they wanted to kick me out. And thank God my wife was with me. She's like, absolutely not. And so they ran a test, and then I ended up having to stay in the hospital for 5 days. But if my wife had not been my advocate right then and there, I would have had to go home. I would have had to go back. It would just would have been a total disaster. So you can't just blindly trust in authority.
Yeah. The problem with some of the dietitians, I think, today is they're so brainwashed from the organizations they're learning from.
Mm,
They're learning that you have to do all this because you look at the training and the funding, of course, we know all comes from these organizations that are have a vested interest in this
mm, mm.
kind of thing.
Yeah,
So we're in a weird spot where we just have to try things for ourselves and find out what works best for us
yeah, yeah,
and
absolutely.
how we
We've
feel
got to
and
know
understand
ourselves.
our history is on our side.
That's right. That's right. And not in anything in life, don't rely on blind authority. Always
Yeah.
investigate for yourself. Now, don't be someone who never trusts anybody. That's not a good way to go through life. But have trust in yourself.
Yeah.
Trust your intuition. Yeah, I mean, carnivore, we could do a whole separate discussion on this. Carnivores help put me much more in touch with my intuition and my gut feeling, and the ability to access that. When you're
Mhm.
living in a brain fog, it's hard to access your gut, and what you really want. When you have clarity, when you have the proper human diet, it is much easier to access. That's another big topic.
Say goodbye to everybody. I can
Guys,
tell I'm lagging at least on my end.
yeah, a little bit.
Ahui ho, brothers. Ahui ho.
This has been wonderful. Thank you, guys. Honored to be with
Yeah.
you, Chad.
Yeah, it's an awesome. Good time meeting you, and we'll see everybody else later. Stay carnivorous.